Welcome to CUFIS Network.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of the CUFIS podcast. I'm very happy to be here today with Hasaan Agha for the third episode. Just briefly to introduce myself, my name's Amar Patel, and I'm the current events director at CUFIS. Now, about Hasaan. So, he recently graduated from the University of Cambridge in economics, and in his first year at Cambridge, he completed a spring week with JP Morgan, and then later a summer internship with Deutsche Bank, and that is now where he will work in the global markets division. Thank you, Hasaan, for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's get straight into it. So you came to Cambridge as an undergrad, obviously. Could you tell us about the last 3 or 4 years and how what you did in those years led up to you starting a career in this sector and specifically with Deutsche?
Sure. So I think I'll start just a few months before uni. I actually participated in the McKinsey Leadership Academy. Prior to that, I didn't really know where I wanted to head towards in terms of my career or anything really like that, or what opportunities there were for me. But whilst I was there, I met a lot of highly motivated individuals. And I think that was probably like the turning point for me in going from focusing on what I'm going to be studying to, where I'm going to be once I complete my course. So a lot of people there spoke to me about spring weeks and all those kind of things, which I had literally no clue about before going there. So I kind of built a strategy in my mind that I know I'm going to be busy once I get to Cambridge, enjoying my first year, meeting people. I knew it was going to be a really hectic time and, getting used to the course. So I got all my applications out before I actually came to Cambridge. So I think I was quite lucky in that regard that I had the information early, because I think a lot of people come into Cambridge and find out sort of in their first couple of weeks that this is even a thing, that you have spring weeks at your disposal in your first year. So, and I think because the applications are rolling, that really put me at quite an advantage. So obviously I was able to secure JP Morgan. I did also have an offer from Rothschild. But the interesting thing was, at the time, I didn't really know much about different divisions. So Rothschild was, of course, an advisory, more like IBD focused, whereas the JP Morgan one was specific to markets. At the time when I was applying, I kind of, I'd say just randomized which division I would apply to at each spring week. Because I was like, whichever one I get, it's like a sign that, I can learn about this one first and then see if it suits me. So I didn't want to, try and pinpoint it too early, because I didn't really know anything, to be quite frank. So I came into that at JP Morgan. It was a week. It's quite short. There's a lot of presentations. There's not a lot of hands-on stuff, but there were opportunities to shadow 2 desks on the trading floor, and that was like my first exposure to a trading floor, and it was really exciting seeing the pace of everything. It was really cool. I met a lot of great people my age and also people who work at JP Morgan. But unfortunately, their conversion process for that at the time, I'm not sure if it's changed. It wasn't actually at the end of the week. It was you get a fast track application when everyone else applies. So I wasn't able to convert that. And so, all the summer internships, again, I had the same strategy for summer internships at the end of first year. Before they opened, I had my CV ready. I had my cover letters ready, like a template cover letter that I could adapt to different firms. So that as soon as applications opened, I had like a huge spreadsheet with like, I don't know how many firms, maybe like 30 or more, all their opening dates, what they require, what the tests are like, all laid out on the spreadsheet. And the day that it would open, I'd send my application in to make sure that with this whole system of rolling applications, I'd be in the best position possible. I'd do their tests as soon as possible. So I think that's how I kind of tried to stay on top of the game. I don't reckon myself to be like any type of standout candidate. I know the competition is really tough, but I think this is one of the ways that no matter where you stand, it can put you at a big advantage from some people who might be a bit more complacent with their applications. So that was my kind of thought process. And I interviewed with quite a few people. It was obviously Deutsche Bank was one of the earliest who called me in for an interview. I think it was around November time of second year, so it's quite early on.
Okay.
And I had my offer literally the day after the assessment center. So it was like a big relief from there on that I've secured something. I still went to all the other interviews, all the other assessment centers, simply just primarily for interview practice. Because I know, like, at this point, I've only done maybe 3 or 4 interviews. If I can, finish second year having done like 10 assessment centers, then the more the merrier, basically. So I think I had an assessment center with Credit Suisse, BlackRock, who I got an offer for. Um, there might have been one or two others, but I stuck with Deutsche Bank. Obviously, they make you sign the contract quite quickly, so at that point I was quite relaxed, had my internship secured, and then I just focused on everything else going on in second year. To be honest, my priorities weren't necessarily the course. I was quite focused on extracurriculars in second year. I was president of the Pakistan Society. I hosted the Marshall Conference. I was the president of that in second year. So I had quite a busy second year in terms of extracurriculars, and I think my degree definitely took a hit because of that.
Okay.
Went into the internship, and that was honestly one of the best experiences I've had. They literally they'll throw you in with the work. Well, first you have a few weeks, like a week or so of training. It's just great fun. You learn a lot. You meet amazing people. You have a great time. Most days everyone will go out for drinks afterwards, and you just have you meet people your age from all different unis, all different courses. Real great fun, and then you obviously get thrown into your desk. It's quite daunting at first, to be honest. You know, you kind of feel like there is an expectation of you to. I feel especially as a Cambridge student, when everyone hears, "Oh, you went to Cambridge," there is almost that "Oh, wow, you must know everything." When it's far from the case. The economics course doesn't. I wouldn't say it sets you up at all really for banking. It's a common misconception. So you are definitely starting from scratch, especially when there's a lot of other interns who are doing masters in from Europe and stuff, and they seem to know a lot. But once after the first few days, you just got to find your feet. And yeah, I'd say it was about 8 weeks on the desk. There was 2 rotations that were 4 weeks long each. Learned a lot, did a lot of interesting work. I felt like I was definitely adding value as an intern. I'd say that's the key focus. And then at the end of the the internship, right at the end, they on the final day they tell you whether you've got an offer or not for a grad job. And I was lucky enough that I had an offer for it.
Yeah, that's great. Now, in terms of, like you said, you had an offer with BlackRock. You also obviously were with global markets at Deutsche. What kind of made you attracted to global markets over, IBD or asset management? Because a lot of students at Cambridge, we're not really sure what division. So, what gave you that indication?
Yeah, so it is quite interesting, I guess, that when it came to spring weeks, I had an offer for advisory IBD. Then internship, I had offers for either asset management or global markets. And for me, I'd say the thing that ruled out IBD for me personally straight away was the hours. It's just something I'm personally not willing to sacrifice. The time I spend with my family is really important to me. So for me, no matter, even if the work was perfect for me, I wouldn't touch it because it's just, yeah. So that was personal preference. So I ruled it out. I didn't look too much into it just because as soon as I heard about the hours, it's not for me. Then in terms of asset management versus global markets, I'd say it's quite different, even because obviously in the market side, you're on the sell side, on asset management, you're on buy side. So I think the thing that attracted me to markets is as a market maker, it's very fast paced. It's really sort of, rather than being on the side of managing portfolios and deciding on these investments and stuff like that, it's more just very instantly reacting to and coming up with pricing. And on the trading floor, it's really fast paced, exciting. Everyone's you hear so much going on at once, and you have to take in all this information that's thrown at you and form opinions on it, views on it. At the same time as knowing your product, you need to know your client really well. I mean, a lot of this stuff does apply to asset management, but I guess the pace is different and the work is quite different. And asset management has that very sort of long-term view, whereas I'd say markets is sort of more of a short-term view. But yeah, I really like the idea of how my work can be completely tied into what's going on in the world. Just you hear something on the news, and that's instantly going to impact the markets, and you're kind of that first person who has that interaction with the markets, and you're facilitating the flow. And you need to know everything at once, bring it all together to have a view on what you think and can expect in the markets. And that sort of analysis, that being tied into everything and having to know everything, that really interests me personally. So I think that was the main main attraction, I guess.
Great. So in your summer intern at Deutsche, could you give us an insight into, obviously no day is the same, but what would your typical day kind of be? Like, what were the working hours like? What were you doing?
Yeah, so it was quite interesting with mine. So I came in with the expectation of global markets means sales, trading, or structuring, and you're going to be on the trading floor, on the public side of things, and that was basically what I came in with the expectation of. But interestingly, both of my rotations were actually on the private side, and they were both sort of more project focused work, almost you could say on the corporate finance IBD kind of side. So the first desk that I was on was debt capital markets. It was origination. It was in emerging markets, particularly CEMEA region, so Central and Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So the markets that we focused on were quite interesting, and obviously the product was bringing bonds into market, which is far from the job of like traders and sellers. It's a much slower kind of work. And then the second desk I was on was asset-backed securities origination, which again, it's dealing with large portfolios of loans and properties, originating those assets or buying them. So again, much slower, much more analytical and long-term work. So I'd say maybe my average day would probably be quite different to the interns that were on the trading floor and had that exposure to the public side. But I can kind of give a bit of an insight into both because obviously I saw what my colleagues and stuff were exposed to as well. So for me personally, I'd come in at about 9 o'clock, and then the first thing I would do would probably be send out an email updating the whole team globally. So we had some people sitting in the Middle East, some people elsewhere as well. So I would send out emails to the whole team just saying these are the deals that we're working on, this is the progress on them, this is who's working on them. Quite a simple email. I just had a template for it to send out every morning. And then I'd basically be working on the deals. I mean, I was thrown straight into the deep end working on presentations that were going out to clients. Some of the presentations I worked on were, I was the only person working on them and they were going out to finance ministers of countries. And I was like, this is insane. That something that I'm putting together, obviously using templates and with the support of the whole team around me, but I'm kind of the one working on it. Obviously they sign off on it. But this is going direct to the desk of a finance minister of this country in the Middle East or this country in Europe. So that for me was really exciting, that it's not like that on every desk or every bank where they will give you, real work. It very much depends on what kind of stuff the desk needs you to do. Some of them they'll make sort of fake sort of projects for you to work on because they can't have you working on real active deals. But I was quite lucky in that regard. So that was the first desk. It was mainly PowerPoint stuff. And then the second rotation that I did was a lot more Excel, analyzing portfolios. I hadn't used much Excel before. So there was a lot of Googling involved. I would just kind of, on that one, I'd probably mostly just sit on my desk and, mash away numbers on Excel and try and analyze portfolios, bring something useful to the team. I did a bit of that and I did a bit of analyze. So if they were interested in, so I remember that at the time they were interested in going into some markets to do with the vehicle financing. So they were like to me, can you give us a report? I worked with one of the other interns on my desk. Can you build a report on covering these aspects of vehicle financing so we can look into it, see the trends in the market? At the same time, I also had to make a similar report about commercial properties in specific regions and countries. So this was, again, whilst not working on an active deal, it was, putting together work that the team can then use, and it will really add value and give them an insight into the market without them having to, go through all that work. So you definitely, as an intern, you can add a lot of value. So that would be my day-to-day kind of work that I would do. But in between, obviously, I feel like the culture at Deutsche Bank was quite relaxed. So I was quite lucky with that. So, I'd go out for lunches with the other interns who go to the canteen and go for a walk. Being based in Liverpool Street, I think it's quite nice. It was, in the summer, it was really nice. I prefer it to Canary Wharf personally. A lot of nice places to eat. So we definitely enjoyed the local area, all the food nearby. What else did we do? The HR team held a lot of events. You could go and find out about other desks. They'd give a presentation about the kind of work they do. So you can, whilst you're only interning on 2 desks, you can learn pretty much about the whole of global markets. There's desks you wouldn't even imagine exist. You'd have no idea until someone comes and speaks to you about it, and you're like, oh wow, like this is part of markets. For example, the two desks I worked on, I think when you say to someone global markets, that's not really what they think. So I'd say that was my typical day, and when I would leave the office would kind of vary on how much work there is. Some days, especially Fridays, they tend to be quite relaxed. The trading floor will be out by like 5 o'clock. Um, Most of the sort of project-based teams like DCM and ABS, they would be out maybe 6. Some days they were late. Some days even I had to come in at 7 because we would have a call with a government or a team in another country. So depending on time zones or so some days I came in at like 7. Well, I remember one day I left at like 10 o'clock. Um, I just had to get the work done. We needed to send it out the next day. If we hadn't sent it out, then we wouldn't secure the deal because a lot of it was putting together proposals to say take us on this origination. So again, it's really important work. So I didn't feel like, even though I was working long hours at times, I didn't feel like it was it felt like it was meaningful. So I wasn't there wasting my time. It was interesting. I was learning a lot. So I didn't mind doing those crazy hours some days, but it definitely wasn't the case that every day I was working, really long hours. It was mainly, I'd say, 9 to 6, 9 to 7. Yeah, I'd say that's probably my average day. In terms of the public side of things, a lot of it was obviously, you can't trade as an intern, so there's little you can do in terms of working on active deals and stuff. But a lot of it would be putting together like a bond pitch and pitching it to your team. There are some like tasks like the traders can't leave their desks; they will rely on you to get their lunch. There are, there's typical sort of intern tasks that you envisage, but by no means is it, you don't get treated like some sort of slave or something who's just there to do nonsense. I feel like when you're there, they really treat you with like you can almost picture what it would be like working there and working alongside these people. You get that, you feel like an adult when you're there, and I think that was the coolest thing for me, was getting a proper insight into what it's like working at a bank. It can't even compare to like how a spring week is. A spring week is very much like they're holding your hand and walking you through it. This is like they treat you like a colleague. So I'd say that's probably like the key takeaway about what does it feel like to be an intern. What's your average day? It's what it's like to be a banker, and that day is always different, but it's exciting.
Great. Just with regards to your internship, then, like, of course, it's so hard to get internships, and once you do get them, there's then the barrier of converting them to full-time grad roles. So, what would you say you did specifically to stand out from the crowd to ensure that you converted that summer internship?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's really hard to tell what they're looking for when you're there, and so you almost spend your 8, 9 weeks, however long it is, quite paranoid. Like, am I doing the right things? Am I too friendly? Am I too professional? Am I doing enough work? Am I doing enough networking, socializing? How do you balance all these different aspects? Um, and I was quite surprised because at the end of our internship, we had an event in the Sky Garden, which was amazing. It was like a massive party that they threw for us. And I was speaking to one of the HR ladies there, and she was like to me, "Oh, we actually picked you out as one of our star interns." And I was like, "Really? Like, how did that happen?" Because there's no set criteria about what they're looking for. It very much is about, I think, you need to spend your first week figuring out what is the dynamic in this team that I'm in. Is this team the kind of people who will want to sit at their computer all day, stare at their screen, mash out a lot of work, not talk very much, and then leave the office and go home? Or are they the type they'd rather spend a little bit longer at the office, but have a laugh, chat about football, chat about this, go out for a drink afterwards? You need to kind of figure out what this team like, because they're not only are they looking at, are you good at your job, are you good for the firm, but they're looking at, are you good for this desk? So you need to look at all of those things. You need to prove that you're competent, able to finish your work and balance your time. You need to show that you fit in with the culture of the firm. So make the effort to, get to know other desks, learn as much as possible. Look into the firm, pay, like, at the time there was restructuring at Deutsche Bank, and there were talks from all parts of senior management. So show, if you're there and that kind of stuff is happening, show an interest. Watch the videos, watch the talks from senior management, go to the events, and ask your team about it. What do you think about what's going on? Like, are you supportive of the restructuring? What do you think? How do you think it will impact your team? Ask these kind of questions and show genuine interest in the future of the firm. And then, if your team is the kind of team where you can have a little bit more relaxed chat, make sure you do that. There was one of the people working on my team. Like, I noticed she was into her designer stuff, and I love my brands, I love my fashion. So I would just sometimes just go up to her and we would just chat about. I'd ask her about her handbag. It was a nice, what was it at the time? I think it was a Saint Laurent handbag, and I was like, oh, that's a really nice bag. We spoke about fashion for a bit. So then it brings down those barriers, and they'll start to see you as someone who can fit in really well with the team. Me and my manager on my first rotation, we would go out. I'd ask her I think it was every other week, or maybe at the end of each week, I'd be able to say, oh, is it all right if we could just go for a chat, maybe grab a coffee or something, and just you could give me a bit of feedback. What am I doing right? What am I not doing right? What do you want to see more from me? That, I think, is the key, because if you wait until the end of your rotation to get feedback, you can't action it. You'll move on to your next desk. They'll be looking for something completely different. So that feedback is essentially useless. Some of it might be transferable, but it's not going to do much. They've already handed in to HR that they're not that impressed or whatever. So every week or so, just be like to your manager, oh, can I have like a 10-15 minute chat? Just go through my feedback whenever you're free. If they keep putting it off, just keep bugging them. Like not every like half an hour, but like, if you tell them at the end of the day and they're like, oh yeah, I'll do it at the end, then, the next morning, if they never chase you up about it, be like, oh, like, is there going to be time in your calendar today for it? But make sure it happens, because then you can adapt your behavior. They might tell you, the team want to see this from you. They want to see more initiative, or maybe you're doing your work really well, but you're not socializing enough. They'll be, be nice to hey, ask more questions, or, come out for drinks with us, blah, blah, blah. That stuff is important. And the other main thing I would say is try and go for a coffee chat with every single person on the desk. That's one thing my manager on my first rotation told me, and I tried to stick by it as much as I can. It can be a bit daunting because they're really busy. Some of them, like, you'll notice they don't show that much interest in you. That's just how it is, right? They're busy. They have a lot to do. As long as you get around to maybe like 80% of the desk, that's fine. But definitely at least try and learn about what each person does, how they fit into the team, how they got to where they are, what they see as their next steps, and just show an interest in that. Like, there was even a guy who sat nearby who wasn't even part of our core team, but I had a coffee with him, and I was like, how does your work support this team? Try and speak to the desks nearby, find out how because obviously you have a team, but they're not working on their own. They're working alongside all the other teams to put together something. So find out how it is that your team supports this team, and how this team supports your team. Find out how that whole chain of work actually functions. Because then you're showing that you genuinely are interested. You're not just at your computer being told, okay, put this presentation together, and you're doing it. You're going ahead, you're asking, how does my presentation benefit you guys, my core team, and how does it benefit the next team that we're going to pass it on to? Or how is the other team fed into this work? By understanding that whole chain, you're again showing that you are genuinely interested. So I'd say those are the three key tips. It's find the right balance between social and your work, have regular feedback, and have a chat with all of your team and some of the teams that sit nearby or support your team. I'd say if you do that, I'd be very surprised if you get negative feedback at the end of that.
Yeah, I think that's some really great advice, and it's really good to know that that's what helped you secure your internships at the end. Just further from that as well, of course, we find ourselves in quite a weird time now, where a lot of these internships have gone virtual for many, both spring and summer internships. How would you recommend standing out in those, given that the whole social aspect is sort of cut out to an extent?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Like, I feel like a lot of the advice is a lot easier said than done in a physical working world than it is, over Zoom or whatever they're using nowadays. Obviously, it's hard for me to say because my start date was actually supposed to be in July, but it's been delayed now to October. So I probably would have better advice if I was working already and had an idea of how the teams are communicating and everything. But I would say the thing about having regular coffee chats with each of your team members still holds. You can still drop them a message and say, or maybe here's one thing: you might not actually know who all your team are because you're not sitting with them. So, firstly, ask your manager, can I have a list of the team and all their roles? So then you have a full list of names. You can drop them a message, drop them an email, and say, "Hey, I found out from a manager that you're part of this team. Blah blah blah. Would it be alright if we hop on a call sometime and just have a quick chat? I want to know about what you do." So that still applies. Again, the thing about having weekly things with your manager still applies. In terms of standing out virtually, I'd say I think now this is it might not be true, but I feel like what might make you stand out is initiative because they'll send you out work and you'll get that done. Make sure that you don't just because obviously they're not looking over your shoulder now and seeing that you're just wasting time. Make sure that you get your work done efficiently and you're like, what can I do next? What can I help? Don't pester them. Like, don't message them every 5 minutes. Say, oh, have you got any work for me? Have you got any work for me? Because if they said no the first time, then find something to do. Make yourself, do some research or read some news articles or whatever if they haven't got work for you. But definitely make sure you ask once you finish. Don't expect them to just because they could very easily forget about you if they're not sitting next to you, right?
Yeah.
Make sure you remind them that if there's any work for me, please do hand it down. And when you complete work, again, find out how is that work going to benefit your team? What are they going to use it for? And if it's like a small part of a project, find out about the whole project. Say, message whoever's in charge of that project and say, oh, like when you get a moment, can we sit down? Can you talk me through how this deal came about, or where do you see it going? Or if you're more on the trading side, like and you're pitching a project, pitching a product or a security to your team, say to them also, let's say you've completed your pitch over Zoom or whatever, and they're like, they've asked you questions, blah blah blah. Then be like, also, what's your take on this? Do you agree? Do you think it's a buy? Do you think it's a sell? Where do you see the market for this product going in the next 12 to 48 months? How do you see that trend changing? Ask these kind of questions because then it shows that it's not just that you got told to give a presentation, you did it, and then you said, okay, cool, thanks, bye. But you then genuinely showed an interest and you actually care about the work. I think that will make you stand out because it's going to be very easy for a lot of interns to, do as they're told, send it off, and then that's it. I mean, they're sitting behind their laptops. So I'd say that that's the main thing: show initiative, ask questions, and that's how you show interest and stand out.
Okay, cool. And just our last question really is, we've obviously spoke quite a bit about summer internships and grad roles and spring insights and that kind of thing. Could you just wrap up and give us your 3 key pieces of advice? What made you successful and what you think, and what have you seen in other fellow successful interns?
I'd say the first thing that comes to mind is be friendly and easygoing. No one wants someone who's gonna walk into a bank as an intern and pretend they know everything and be really like uptight and serious. Because at the end of the day, everyone is you're spending 12 hours plus with someone. You don't want to hire someone who's going to bore you to death. So at networking events, be friendly. I always like at networking events, I always like to try and find someone who I feel I click a lot with, try and find common ground with them and bond over that. So a lot of the time I'll go to networking events, I won't even talk much about the firm or anything. I'll almost become on like a personal level with that person. And then afterwards in like a follow-up email, ask the questions that I had in a more easy space. And that instantly shows that you're friendly and they'll probably flag you up to HR like, I like this person. And then the same applies when you're on the spring week or an internship. If you're like that, you'll stand out because they'll just feel like they connect with you and click with you. So being friendly and easygoing. The second thing is be very efficient with your time. Again, that applies to all stages of your career. So when you're coming into university / coming into second year, like I said, I had that spreadsheet where I said, these are the firms I want to apply to. These are the dates their applications open. These are the deadlines. this is what the application process is. So I need to do a numerical test, whether I need to do like a verbal reasoning test, all this stuff. I had it mapped out from the get go. So I didn't have to, waste my time like double checking this day, double checking that day. I had it all in one place, and I was able to send stuff out on the day it opened, make sure I do my test straight away. That efficiency, I think it got me a lot of those interviews, just being one of the first few people in. They recruit as it goes. They're not waiting for the deadline. So if you're the last one in, they've filled up 99% of their places. It's unlikely you're going to get it. So I'd say that efficiency, and it also ties into, when you're on your internship or on your spring week, doing your work, doing your presentations, doing all of this, but still having time to get to know your fellow interns, get to know your team, take some time to like even just enjoy yourself and not constantly just mash out your work. Find time to do the other things that you're there for, because you're not just there to do work. Especially you're not a full-time employee. How much work are you really going to do? So balance your time well. So that efficiency goes across the board. And then third one, okay, I haven't thought about this one, so let me think now. I'd say do as much as you can in terms of go to all the networking events, go to, apply to every single place that you can. You hear too many times people get disheartened by rejections and hearing about rejections. They're like, oh, what's the point? Like, oh, I'm not going to apply to Goldman Sachs. They're just going to reject me anyway. Like that kind of attitude, like it's setting yourself up for failure. If you have your CV ready, you have a template cover letter, how much is it really going to hurt you going on their application, typing in your name, your date of birth, your address, and sending attaching? It's not going to kill you. And if you get rejected, so what? At least you tried, because it's very much a numbers game. Sometimes you get caught out and you get thrown out the system straight away. Sometimes you get through to assessment center and then you can show your personality. So don't get disheartened. Go to all the networking events, find out about them beforehand, apply to them, apply to every single firm that offers the division that you're interested in. Don't be disheartened by rejections, because I've had like an infinite amount of rejections, but at the same time, because I never took those to heart, I just kept applying. Eventually something like a door opens up. So it's just about finding your fit. At the end of the day, if you're getting rejected from somewhere, it's because you're not really going to enjoy it or fit in there anyway. Because either the cultures won't match up or you're whatever. So it's a blessing in disguise. So stay positive in that respect and just keep persevering, and eventually you'll find the place that fits. Like I'll give my example just to end on. It's like a lot of people, when I say, "Oh, I'm starting at Deutsche Bank," they're like, "Oh, wow, like there's a lot of restructuring. Are you even going to have a job in a year's time?" All this, like, there's a lot of negative press about DB. Like, I'm not going to deny it. And going into my internship, I was paranoid about it, because anytime I said, "Oh, I'm interning at DB," they were like, "Oh, you're not going to convert. They don't even have jobs." But I'm so glad that I'm at DB, because for me, the culture is perfect. I know a lot of banks are very, cutthroat, very like hours are crazy. There's FaceTime culture. I didn't feel any of that at DB, and that suits me. If I've done my work and I've shown my face, and I want to be able to go home and enjoy the evening with my family. I don't want to be like, oh man, my manager he wants to see me here until 10, even if I don't have work. Let me just find something to do. Or they have a nice culture. Just everyone it feels chilled out, and that's for me. So yeah, okay, there's whatever you want to call turbulent, but it still suits me, and I'm sure that if I work hard, I keep this attitude, then it doesn't matter what goes on around me. As long as I do my job well, I'll succeed. So it's about finding your fit, and don't stress too much about everything else.